Yeah, set the screen, young fella, please.
He's trying to get one guy out. He's trying to get him to get a pin down. Look, he's trying to get him to get out. So he has a pin down with Wiseman. Even Wiseman was late because he's looking at Draymond.
Who isn't looking at Draymond when he's jumping around like that?
Well, look, that's the job. That's why Steph has played so much better since Draymond came back. He's got another floor leader out there.
Welcome to The Jump. We, too, have many floor leaders here. I'm Rachel Nichols alongside 2016 NBA champ Richard Jefferson and 2008 Finals MVP Hall of Fame nominee Paul Pierce.
Ladies and gentlemen, come on.
Coming up, as Woj reports, KD will enter quarantine for the next week. How should the Nets approach the next 4 games without him? We'll discuss that. But first, so it is hard to win a professional NBA basketball game when you are down by 6 with under 25 seconds to go in regulation. Like, really hard. As in, before last night, 8,106 teams had tried it over the last decade, and of those 8,106 times, only twice had a team ever pulled it off. That's not what one would call statistically encouraging. Remember in Empire Strikes Back when C-3PO told Han Solo the probability of them getting through the asteroid field and Han said, "Never tell me the odds"? Yeah, even those odds were better than what the Pacers faced last night in New Orleans. Down 6 with under 25 on the clock. So it was an absolute mad experience watching what happened next. Victor Oladipo pulling up from nearly 30 feet. That shot as free and easy as a Sunday bucket at the park. The Pelicans appeared a bit stunned as the ball went in, but with just 20 seconds to go at that point and possession, New Orleans still should have been pretty comfortable, right? Leading by 3? Except then J.J. Redick, who has been on one end or another of hundreds of thousands of inbound passes over his 15-year career, was part of boofing this one. Both he and Lonzo Ball dissolving under the Pacers' press. And look, even then, you would think...
Where was Lonzo going? Where was Lonzo going? He started to dribble back into... No, Lonzo, no.
What's going on right here?
Right? And by the way, you'd think that Stan Van Gundy would have called a timeout at that point, which he could have. They would have advanced the ball to the other side of the court.
It. That's,
Right? He didn't, though. Oladipo wrestled it away. Malcolm Brogdon, Miles Turner, bam, the ball game. Then came overtime. Another Oladipo steal here, right? Nice driving layups.
It takes everything to go wrong and everything to go right.
With another 3.
That's why
left open from the wing.
Didn't do it.
This is, of course, the version of Victor that so electrified Indiana when he first arrived there, but has been much harder to come by since he suffered that horrible leg injury over 23 months ago. Honestly, it's just been a weird past year for Victor overall. During his rehab, he tried his hand at reality TV, appearing on The Masked Singer and doing so well, he earned this whole new wave of fans. Then January and February were tougher. He returned to the court but struggled to find rhythm. Then came the shutdown, right? Then came the bubble, which Victor first said he was opting out of, then decided to opt back in for. But the whole thing was patchy enough. The extension he was once expected to sign this past offseason never materialized. Oh, and somewhere in there, the Indianapolis Star reported that Oladipo wanted out of Indiana entirely to the point he'd been asking opposing players to trade for him when they were on the court together. Now, Oladipo has denied that story.
Well, players can't fulfill trade requests?
Now that he's set to be a free agent at the end of this
Not unless
season,
you're LeBron.
there's certainly a good chance the Pacers will indeed trade him before the deadline to avoid losing him for nothing a few months later. All of which leads back to last night and Oladipo keying one of the NBA's more statistically improbable comebacks. The Pelicans didn't make it easy, even in overtime. This Lonzo dunk with 25 seconds left tied the score at 116, but Malcolm Brogdon finishing things off, sealing it for Indiana with this floater. The win moved the Pacers' record to 5-2, good for a tie for second in the East. Still plenty of questions, though. Can the Pacers stay in the top half of the bracket in this shortened season? If they do, will Oladipo even be with them at the end of it? I could work out the probability of all that, but as a great man once said, never tell me the odds. A good policy in an asteroid field and apparently also in this weird, crazy NBA season. So, Paul, Oladipo is extension eligible still. He's one of the few contracts in the NBA. There's all these different parameters, but he can still sign throughout the season right up until the end. So they could just extend him and keep him with him, or they could decide he's more valuable to have as trade bait and basically deal him before the deadline, get more back for him, and start with a fresh start with sort of that kind of group. What do you think is a better move for the Pacers right now?
Well, the problem is you have to figure out what the extension number is going to be because a player like Oladipo, who's been an all-star, is probably asking for max dollars to stay in Indiana. And if I'm a GM or owner for Indiana, I'm not sure if I want to give that to him based on his injury-prone history. And I want to see if he can get back to that all-star level. So, I'm kind of stuck in the middle on what to do. Do I trade him, get younger picks? But if I'm Oladipo, I want to stay there and try to regain form, because this is where they love you. This is where you made a name for yourself. This is where you became an all-star. And so the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I think he needs to, weigh his options a little better, but really consider staying in Indiana, maybe at a lower price.
Yeah, and that's tough, though, because when you're talking smaller market, when you're talking about Indiana, to say that I want to take a pay cut to stay in Indiana, that becomes a little bit harder. I agree with you. They're invested in him. He was an all-star there. He'll have an opportunity to be an all-star. They want to invest in him. But he also wants to get paid like a person you're investing in. And look, the issue is when you have him, then you have Sabonis, and then you have Malcolm Brogdon, and you have Miles Turner. If you pay all your money to those guys, I think we know that the ceiling for those four as a collective unit is probably conference finals if they overachieve or play at their peak. So I can see them trying to negotiate a better deal with Victor Oladipo, because ultimately, if you give him max dollars, that's your team. That's it. And it's a smaller market, so it becomes a little bit more difficult to navigate around it.
One of the questions, too, is how needy is anybody at the trade deadline, right? Because the two names that you will probably hear the most requests for who would be available, well, James Harden is sort of on a different level, but the two names then you've got Bradley Beal, Victor Oladipo, and if teams feel like they're close, but not at a point where they could compete for a championship, but they feel it's important for this year, maybe someone's GM job is on the line, then, maybe the price goes up and someone will give you something great for him. So I think part of that is not really under the Pacers' control.
And to your point, those two players, but I would put Victor Oladipo closer to a Drew Holiday type, right? Where he's a guy that can just kind of get you over the edge. Bradley Beal is a huge difference maker, right? The way he goes. So if you're trading for Bradley Beal, you're going to give up a lot, right? If you're trading for Victor, you might be able to finesse an opportunity where it's a pick or one or two young players. You might not have to give up much. So I think Victor's name is the one that a lot of teams are going to be pining for, just like Drew.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I mean, he's not as valuable as Bradley Beal. I mean, we've seen what Bradley Beal has been able to do over the last couple of years, emerging as an all-star, averaging 30 points a game this year. He's that player that can get a team over the hump, say a Houston Rockets or whoever's at the top. I mean, a Utah Jazz. I'm just throwing teams out there. Victor Oladipo is a question mark still. So, how much do you want to sacrifice to bring him in for an opportunity at a championship? It doesn't necessarily guarantee you a championship, but an opportunity. Some teams will take that. But it's not guaranteed.
Well, it's in Victor's best interest, obviously, to play as well as he can, up his own value, either for a contract or a trade to a contender, and did that last night. Wow, what a crazy, crazy end of that game. I want to switch over to what happened in the state of Texas. Luka and the Mavericks went into Houston and beat James Harden, John Wall, and the Rockets behind a 33-point triple-double from Doncic. Now, unfortunately for Houston, Boogie Cousins only got to see the floor for 3 minutes.
Kentucky buddies, right?
Yeah, Cousins picking up
friends
2
between
texts.
the lines, Paul.
Woo! Brief entanglement.
You had friends
Willie
between the
Cauley's
lines, Paul.
If you went to Kansas and I went to Kansas, there's mutual respect because we went to the same school. We're alumni. I mean, come on. Come on,
Kentucky has so
Boogie.
many guys in the NBA. I mean, if they
And they were all at Kentucky for 8.5 minutes.
half of the game, referee
So it's
John
are you
Noble
really?
explaining his
Wait, you went to
reasoning
Kentucky
for the second
too?
technical, saying Cousins gave, quote, an overt gesture directed at an official in resentment of a non-call. Richard, do you think Boogie's ejection was warranted based on his actions? Is this like Tim Duncan smiling or whatever?
No, because look, I think everyone will understand that you get a little leeway when you're Boogie Cousins and you're a multi-time All-Star and you're averaging 25 points a game. Antics are allowed. We've seen it with other players. We don't need to go and say names like Draymond or need to say other names where you've seen antics allowed to a certain degree because you've earned that
Richard
right.
Jefferson.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you have an individual that is now hasn't played in 2 years and is now coming off the bench, the same antics that were allowed 2 years ago when you're an all-star are not allowed right now. I don't think that he would have been thrown out of the game if it was 2 years ago and he was 25 points a game.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it means more when you get 25 a game.
Yes.
So I mean,
Okay, but Boogie's been being thrown out of games for a while now.
Yeah,
I think 2 years ago.
He's in the same stratosphere as Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah.
I mean, you think old dogs are going to learn new tricks, but they're not. But you have to give him a longer rope because you already know he's going to be demonstrative. You know he's going to play with a lot of emotion. So he needs a little bit more rope than some of these other guys. Like Draymond, he needs a little more rope. You know he's going to do it. But is it worth throwing a guy out the game if it's really not that necessary? Yeah, you put a hand on somebody, okay. That's one tech. But a look or a stare down or a couple words.
But when you average in 25, Paul,
yeah, that's easy.
You get,
But flip it over to if you're someone who averages a lot of texts, right? You made the comparison to Sheed, right?
Yeah.
So if you are someone who has a history of technical fouls, like let's say Boogie does, are the officials a little bit trigger happy?
Let me tell you this. If I'm the coach and you out here getting double technicals in the game and you only giving me like 7 points a game, I'm hot.
I'm like, you just took away 2 points.
I'm like, now you're giving me, now that's 5 points that you ain't got me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Don't you think sometimes
I can take it from somebody.
quicker to whistle on someone who has a history?
No, yes, they are, but they're also allow more with a person. If you are an all-star and you are running off and saying these stuff, they give you, because they don't want to throw the all-star out of the game. They understand
there's different rules, Richard, for different players in this.
No, I'm not saying that. The
Yes,
NBA
I'm
is
saying
saying,
they're all.
is saying that.
Richard wouldn't know about these things. The calls you get and all, the leeway with not getting texts. He wouldn't know about that.
Yeah, look.
Every foul that he got, he earned it.
Everyone. But no, look, Boogie Cousins, again, this is like what we talked about players that have had to adjust over the course of their career.
Yes.
Understanding, let's say like a Carmelo, let's say guys that as they careers have, changed and adjusted, it takes that moment. Boogie Cousins, you're not going to get away with the same stuff you did when you were averaging 25 points a game and you're an all-star. You're not. Even if you've always done it, you're not going to get away with it as much.
I couldn't get a call.
No.
Couldn't get a call when I got
So your difference with like Celtics, Wizards versus Clippers.
When I got to the Clippers, I couldn't get a call.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It happens. It's an adjustment.
And that may be the end of that discussion. Coming up, stick with us. A beautiful lob poster from Bam last night. We're going to look at the best alley-oop posters of all time. First, though, time for our when you were dunking at your peak, Paul, could you beat Richard in a dunk contest?
I mean, I could not beat Richard.
What if he wasn't?
That's what I did. He was a scorer. I was a dunker. There was different.
But what if it was Richard?
If we were on the Nerf court and we both were 5, then
Go ahead.
Then rewarded with the alley-oop.
Is it just me or has his athleticism gone down?
No, seriously, I feel like he was dunking a lot harder.
Yeah, like that. I'm just saying.
Wrecking ball. Look at that.
Last year.
Mr. Bodmer, I thought that was.
Y'all didn't want to do the full body change?
No, look though, but look at this dunk by Zion. I feel like last year he would have tried to tear the rim off.
Yeah, but look at this. Look at this. Great lob. And it just, maybe it's behind or whatever. But I need to see that same fierceness of explosiveness that he's been showing for the first 12 games of his career.
Maybe he'll get back to that.
He got the bucket. What do you want?
I want to see Zion.
Fair play, Kings Warriors. Marvin Bagley stuck out on an island with Steph Curry. You can guess how this turned out. This happened more than once in this game.
Did his dad tweet after that?
He like trade my son.
Trade my son. He doesn't need to be on that island.
Trade my son.
We don't need him. That's still a Steph Curry on the perimeter.
The third. As if there was some confusion over which Marvin Bagley he wanted to trade.
Hey, let's say this. Sacramento is invested in your son like no other team will. You need him to succeed there. Trust me. Trust me.
Hey, trade him so he don't get isolated on Steph Curry.
Oh, we can't have De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox dad saying,
De'Aaron Fox had the best response of that entire back and forth. He just tweeted, Jesus Christ. Make twirling, Rockets Cavs. Luka puts on like a million moves on Christian Wood and then airballed the fadeaway.
He's laughing about it because he's been, got him. Too easy.
Oh my goodness, nice move though.
He just expended a lot of effort before we got there.
That look like he got a lot of me in him. You know what? Hold on. No, seriously though. No, look it, because you know it looks slow and lethargic, but he always get there. You know.
I'm not.
I mean, he a better passer, but as far as scoring ability, me and him got a lot in common.
Yeah, it's like you're not supposed to be athletic, but you're athletic. You get the shot off. Like
no, seriously.
No,
like,
I'm real.
A lot of this.
Look at that. Paul, you're.
I wouldn't airball from that strip, but he
got a lot of you.
Paul has won a title in the Finals MVP. He can say whatever he wants. Miss Humility, back to Kings Warriors. Kelly Oubre working hard inside, thinks he gets a bucket, flexes.
No, I didn't see it.
It does not
watch this. Flex on him.
Paul, is this your boy Von Wafer?
You guys hide?
I was in Boston when Von Wafer did this. He went down the lane and he thought he made the dunk.
Right?
Looking to the camera.
And then tries it out.
Watch out, man. Jermaine O'Neal got traveling because he bumped into him. Come on.
Oh, come on. Watch the guys hide. Watch his teammates hide. Watch, keep going. If you see his teammates hide, they start to duck and hide. Look, they hide behind they hide behind the table. They're like, oh no.
Is our
look go and hide.
Looking at the wrong camera? Look over there.
I don't know what camera. I'm looking at all the TVs. That TV. I'm sorry, guys.
Come on, Vaughn.
Poor Mylan's in the studio, like waving his arms over his head like
screen.
an airplane conductor. Make the Bayou. Bam catches the lob, packs it in on Mike Muscala. Richard, is the ceiling the roof for Bam Adebayo?
He's so good. And you know what I like about him is now that we've seen the game change, we've also seen a hybrid of these 4/5 players. You know, Montrezl Harrell, you have him.
He's on your list for guys who could catch bodies.
Yeah, he definitely catches body. But we were talking about body catchers, but he's a lob body catcher.
Yeah.
Well, funny you should mention.
What, we got something else?
Time to run it back. The best alley-oop posterizations ever.
Let me see
Producer Bobber got up in it. 2005, Kobe on the Blazers.
Oh my goodness. Come on, Cole.
That's what I'm saying. We're not saying get off our lawn.
Man,
but the stars used to be body catchers.
Yeah, I don't see that, man. We got this. That's a good conversation right now. What stars today is catching bodies outside of Giannis?
1984. We can do that during break. Rookie Michael Jordan, Sidney Moncrief. Welcome.
Even Sidney was laughing. Ooh.
Woo.
He's like, damn it, he got me.
He was not. He might have been one of the first. He was not going to be the last.
Not going to be the last. Look at Skinny Mike. Skinny Mike.
Young Michael. 2011, Dwight on Drew Holiday. That's not a fair.
When the bench starts moving. Is that Malik Allen?
No, that's nice, but when your center dunk on the point guard, it don't get the same.
DeAndre, remember DeAndre
on Fox?
No, it was.
Now this was nasty. Jason Terry.
I thought JT died.
That was a little revenge for
until Courtney Lee.
Leave my Wildcat brother alone, man.
I thought he died on this.
I
thought he died. Look at it. You need the yellow tape.
And Bron, just a bully.
I thought he needed white tape after this.
There was some history there, as you know.
Yeah, honestly, I can't stand Bron. He was such a. This was the one.
2013, Jordan.
That's one. Look at him. Look at Vinny Del Negro trying to calm him down. Look at Vinny Del Negro. He's like, you can't calm him down off a dunk like that.
When I look at these highlights, most of these are point guards jumping. Like, why are the point guards jumping for these alley-oops?
Ooh, look at that face there. Ew.
Coming up, the East Semis rematch between the Celtics and Raptors left one team in a state of disarray. We will discuss both teams' outlooks after the break. We may continue this body catcher conversation.
We're going to continue this body catcher.
Last night, when we're talking about the Celtics, 40 points from Jason Tatum. Celtics rallying from an early 13-point deficit to send the Raptors to 1-5 after the game. Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry trying to make sense of their team's slow start.
This is probably uncharted territory for most of us. I know just speaking for myself, I've never been a part of something like this. But you know, we can't hang our heads. Nobody's feeling sorry for us.
I think we just need to, get a little bit more grittier, get a little bit more tougher, and a little bit more nastier, and have a little bit of a swag to us. And right now we have no swag to us. Right now we have nothing, there's nothing to us, right? We're just like that team, teams are looking at us like, all right, let's go eat. And that's not a good feeling.
Tim, I mean, we're only 2 weeks into the season, and again, I want to make the point. These guys are playing in Tampa. I mean, they have been displaced more than any other team due to coronavirus. But how concerned are you about the Raptors right now?
I'm really concerned, Rachel. I thought that game last night with the Celtics starting Tremont Waters here at point guard, without Marcus Smart, without Kemba Walker, playing on a back-to-back, having played in Detroit the day before, that felt like a game for Toronto to get right, get a nice win at home, or at least their temporary home, before going out on this 4-game West Coast trip and around the team. Instead, it was the exact opposite. Fleet and Kyle Lowry said after the game, Nick Nurse, the coach of the Raptors, went basically through every bench player on the team other than Chris Boucher and said that they were not playing good enough. Aaron Baines, the starting center, got Pascal Siakam continues to look lost. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about the Raptors. It is only 2 weeks into the season, but this team does not look anything like the top of the East team that it was supposed to be coming into the season.
Well, look, my thing about this team is that, look, last year when they won 15 games in a row, they were overachieving, right? Like, that wasn't probably them. They were a very good team. I think where they finished in the bubble is probably where they should have, especially given their expectations at the beginning of the year. But then now this year, I think they're just underachieving. They're not a team that should be finished second in the conference, and they're not a team that should be 1-5. So they have a lot of guys that aren't shooting the ball well, particularly well. Powell is not shooting the ball well. I think with a leadership like Kyle Lowry, they're going to be fine. But the last part is, do not underestimate losing Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka.
Yeah.
Like, do not underestimate. You look at what Marc Gasol, him and LeBron James have an amazing pairing right now, and then you add that the way Serge has fit with the Clippers. So you can't look at those two guys and say these guys are fitting great with championship teams and think that Toronto's not going to have a drop without them.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 starters to a championship team.
Well, Paul, let me ask you a question. Toronto keeps being mentioned in the James Harden rumors. Masai Ujiri, remember, took a flyer on Kawhi Leonard, and even though he didn't stay, it paid off for 1 year. Do you think they should kick the tires on that more, Paul? James Harden?
I mean, anything they can do to kick the tires in Toronto, I help. I mean, shoot, but it looked like they pushing that flat tire over there. But they are who I expected them to be. When you lose Kawhi last couple years, you lost Mark and Serge. It may be time to start thinking about trading Kyle Lowry. I mean, he's an aging vet who still can bring some value to a veteran team. Siakam
he's one of the ones playing well at the start.
Yeah, he's playing solid. Siakam has been struggling.
Yes.
I mean, but he's their young star. He's who they have invested in, and start building around him. Lowry, he's a guy that can help people right now. He can help a contending team. So if I'm Toronto, I'll look at probably start to rebuild after losing all these veterans within the last couple years.
Yeah. I hope that Kyle stays in Toronto just because I like it when a player bonds with a franchise the way he has. I will say that I would expect the Clippers to be pretty aggressive on trying to go after. They need more of a floor general. If guys like that start to become available, I'm curious which teams they will be visiting and whether Toronto is one of them. All right, Paul, I want to switch over to the Celtics because with that win last night, they moved to 5-3. How encouraged are you by their start?
Well, I'm very encouraged for the simple fact you don't have one of your star leaders in Kemba Walker. And you've seen Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown playing like the all-star who we think he can be this year. So this is very encouraging for the Celtics. Although I was disappointed in that loss at Detroit, but they made it. They came back and beat Detroit. But you got to be encouraged, especially for their lack of depth, Smart being out, Kemba being out. And they're right up there at the top with the Eastern Conference.
Well, and what I like about, Jaylen Brown is that he's that quote unquote, he's been that third guy now for a while, whether it was with Kyrie was there or when you had Gordon Hayward and then you had Kemba Walker. Not that Jaylen Brown wasn't a stud, but he's continued to work on his game. He's continued to add to his game. And the way he is playing now, look, the first 25 games, 30 games dictate whether or not you're going to be an all-star. Your team's record and your performance. He is performing like an all-star. Jason Tatum might be the best player, but Jaylen Brown is doing so much at a high level. It's just hard to ignore that.
The way Jaylen Brown has played. Coming into this season, he said that he wanted to take on the responsibility that came with Gordon Hayward leaving in free agency and with Kemba Walker being out. And he's done that and then some. I mean, he's been, in my opinion, one of the best players in the league over these first couple weeks of the season. He's getting every clutch basket when Boston needs it, when they get into a funk. And with this lack of depth, as Paul pointed out, with with Kemba out, without Gordon Hayward, relying on a guy like Peyton Pritchard, who had a huge game last night against Toronto. They need Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to play like this every single night to win. So far, they've been doing that.
I want to switch over to the Nets because Woj reported yesterday that Kevin Durant facing a 7-day quarantine after exposure to someone who tested positive. Now, remember, KD himself had COVID-19 in May, but this is the league's protocol, and he does, if he misses all 7 days, that will include the next 4 games. So starting tonight against Utah, back-to-back against Philly, Memphis, then a Sunday game against the Thunder. So, Tim, the Nets are only 3-4, even with KD playing 6 of the first 7 games. What do you feel the Nets should be focusing on over the next week without their leading scorer?
Well, Steve Nash needs to go find every instructional tape he can find on how to play defense and just play them for the next week, whenever they can. Play them, give them to guys to watch at home, watch at practice, watch on the plane, at the hotel, before the game. This team needs to start guarding people. They don't have very much defensive talent. If you go through their top 8 or 9 guys, I would argue they have no above-average defensive players, and they have several minus ones, whether it's Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris, Karis LeVert, Taurean Prince. So they're already working at a deficit, but this team needs to play much better at that end if they want to be a true championship contender. If you go over the last decade, no team other than the Golden State Warriors has been outside the top 10 in defensive efficiency. And the Warriors in 2018 were 11th in defensive efficiency. That was a team, I think we'd all agree, that had a lot more defensive talent than being outside of the top 10. This team does not have that. They have to get much, much better at that end, I think, if they want any chance of being an elite team in the East.
Yeah, and look, I think Kevin Durant's best defensive years came when he was in Golden State, and that's because of the clear principles, the style of defense. He was motivated. He was up there in conversation towards the end of the year, is like, could he be the defensive player of the year? So is he going to be able to get to that same spot? I don't think so. I think for me, you have to look at the other guys. You always have to look at your team from like as a player and say, like, where can I contribute? Losing Spencer Dinwiddie, Taurean Prince. These guys have to focus on the defensive end. If you told me all I have to do is become an above average defender and we are a championship level team, but that's what it's going to take. But that's also going to be the leadership. You talk about the leadership of Kyrie, the leadership of Kevin Durant. Can they get the other players to buy in on a defensive scheme? And Steve Nash and, look, we know Mike D'Antoni is not a defensive, monster, but they need a lot of guys contributing on the defensive end, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, you don't have to have individual great defensive players to have a great defensive team. You just need a great infrastructure on defense. I mean, my Boston Celtics team, we didn't have individual great defenders outside of Kevin, but we had a system in place. But also, I've been watching the Nets this year, and I think they have to do a better job at staggering their stars, too. Mm-hmm. I think Kevin or Kyrie needs to play with the second unit. I also believe Jared Allen should be starting. I mean, I think he's a huge key to what they do defensively. And so I think it's just minor tweaks in what they need to do with their lineup as far as staggering minutes with your stars, getting more time, trying to find more minutes for Jared Allen in that starting lineup also. And I think that'll help their defensive performance moving forward.
Tim, what's the politics right now on Jared Allen starting?
Well, DeAndre Jordan is friends with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, so he is starting. There's little doubt to me that Jared Allen is the far better player, and he should be starting, and Paul is right. I'm sure Richard would agree, whether he'll say it or not. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to be the case, and that's, to Paul's point, that's
one of the tweaks that should happen. It's all about who you're friends with. It's all about who you're friends with.
Why are you pointing at me? Anyways.
That was fantastic. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
I will say that as soon as they fired the coach, DeAndre Jordan was starting like the very next.
Hey, listen, Richard Jefferson was friends with LeBron. Who? Therefore, he got on the team.
I don't like that dude.
You know what I'm saying? Therefore, he made the team.
Yeah. I'm a star, shining brightest in the darkest times. I'm a star, twinkle, twinkle, I bring the sparkle in, light your world up. Yeah, let your world